This program is not for children. If you are under the age of 13, then politely leave. You spoilt little twats. Thank you.
It was a time of great turmoil. Man versus man. Man versus machine. The synthesizers reigned supreme. And movies were never better. It was the 80s. And now, from the secret headquarters of Pop Culture Minefield, Keith and Gary.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Minefield. That's Keith over there.
And that is Gerry.
And we're here to talk about some nerdy nerd stuff, old nerdy nerd stuff. We are doing our series of the 1980s. And we're discussing the top sci-fi films, our top sci-fi films of the 80s. And the year we're talking about today is 1981, which was a very good year. We got MTV. And we got the first launch of the space shuttle, and you can't beat that. So let's get this going here. So the first movie on our list is Scanners, which it's a story of a scientist who sends a man with extraordinary psychic powers out to hunt down others like himself. It's kind of odd for Cronenberg.
Yes.
Because Cronenberg was best known for doing body horror. But this one was, don't get me wrong, there was gore in it, but this was not a body horror story. This was a straight up sci-fi story about people with psychic abilities that can kill with a thought.
Low budget, but very successful. It's definitely one of those films that once you saw it, you never forgot it. I'd say the budget on that particular film, you're right. The budget on that particular film was $3.5 million, and it made $14.2 million.
A successful film for Cronenberg, who up to that point was just an indie filmmaker, and Scanners got him through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God, because we've got a lot of great films by that guy.
Yeah, it was definitely my introduction to actor Michael Ironside.
Yes.
And a continuation of the career of the great Patrick McGoohan, who was known to at least many of our generations being the guy.
Secret Agent Man.
And its pseudo-sequel, The Prisoner.
That's right.
Yes.
Who is number 6?
I am a man, not a number.
That's right. Great series. I actually own it, so I pop it in every once in a while and just let it go while I'm working. I love that show. The next film on the list is Escape from New York.
Now, love this movie. It's hard not to love this film. You really have to be someone who is not willing to have fun and is not into, I think, the prototypical anti-hero, which is really what Snake Plissken actually is.
Yeah, he's an anti-hero. In fact, in my opinion, at the end of that movie, he's probably going to be the most hunted man on the planet.
Yeah.
For doing what he does. But, Cronenberg, Carpenter, he was a politically motivated guy, but he knew how not to throw the politics out there so much that he alienated the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And he was impacted by the interest of the federal police force. He did not like that. So he saw a way of telling a story that shows why a federal police force would be bad. And that was really what inspired Escape from New York. And it's a brilliant film. It takes place in the fictional alternate universe of 1997, because it didn't happen in 1997, when the U.S. president crashes into Manhattan, which is now a giant maximum security prison, and he is held for ransom by the King of New York, played none other by
Isaac Hayes, baby.
What, sucker? Shut your mouth.
You gotta admit, this is a great debut for someone who was not really trained as an actor prior to this to just come on out and do what he did for this. It's Isaac Mother effing Hayes.
Yeah, that's right. He says this line so well. Snake Plissken, huh? Sticks the arrow, knocks him out. I heard you was dead. Best running joke of the film.
A great cast. This is Carpenter pretty much fresh off of Halloween. And it's Kurt Russell, who up to that point was mainly just a Disney guy, who I think a couple of years prior to that had made the big transition into more adult roles by playing Elvis Presley.
He did two things. He did the Elvis movie with John Carpenter. John Carpenter was the director on that. That's how they met. But he also did that Deadly Tower movie about the guy that went up on top of the Texas Tower and started shooting students and anybody that he could see. And he doesn't really talk much in the film. I don't recall him having more than maybe 2 or 3 lines in the entire film. He was a silent character, and he's the bad guy. And that was a smart choice because it helped break him from the Disney thing. And if you don't know, and this is a bit of historical trivia, that the last thing that Walt Disney wrote while he was on his deathbed was the name Kurt Russell. And I believe he was going to say, "Killed me."
That joke he told, I just can't stop.
But Kurt Russell, he was just so good as Snake Plissken. He's played twice in his life characters that he based on other actors. And the first one is this one where he was basically doing Clint Eastwood. It was his. And it's funny that, of course, Lee Van Cleef is in the movie, who was an actor who had worked with Clint Eastwood. So I thought that was funny. I thought it was neat that, well, we can't afford Clint Eastwood, so we'll have Kurt Russell play Clint Eastwood. And later he would do John Wayne when he played Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China.
Good movie. Which itself is a Carpenter film, and it actually started out as a Western and not a modern film.
Which is why it feels like a Western when you're watching it. But Lee Van Cleef, Donald Pleasance, who was a
holdover from Halloween.
That's right. Ernest Borgnine playing Cabby was just, he nailed that character. Snake Plissken. God, can hardly wait to tell whatever his friend's name is that Snake Plissken was in my cab.
The aforementioned Isaac Hayes, Adrienne Barbeau, Carpenter's wife at the time.
That's right.
And I think wasn't she in The Fog?
Yes.
She's nice.
She ran the lighthouse and the radio.
That's right. Yeah.
And of course, the big name actor that is in the film, who just doesn't outshine everybody. He knows how to give a scene to other people, is Harry Dean Stanton, who's probably one of the greatest character actors of the last 100 years.
And for anyone younger than, say, 40, you probably know Harry Dean Stanton from, Alien was another good big movie of his.
With the damn toothpick in his mouth all the time when he's talking.
and for a lot of you younger kids, you know him as the security guard in Joss Whedon's Avengers film, the first one, who finds Bruce Banner after he falls out of the Halo carrier when Loki tricks him into the Hulk-proof prison.
That was really freaking good when he lands. And what was it Harry Dean Stanton says to him about being naked?
Yeah.
You ain't got no clothes, boy.
Yeah. You might have a little bit of a problem.
That's right. Now, and again, this is a film that really was a indie low-budget film.
Yes. The movie was made or budgeted at $6 million and was shot in and around East St. Louis.
That's right, because of all the damage from the fire.
That's right. And it created a perfect environment for where they wanted to film and the story they were telling, and a nice stand-in for the prison. And then the movie ended up making $25 million at the box office.
And of course, he made the film with his two partners, Nick Castle, and who'd worked with him on Halloween, and Deborah Hill, who'd worked with him on Halloween, actually with everything.
And everything.
She died. And what was it you said about Watergate with this one?
It was part of the reason why he wrote it was as a response to Watergate and a few other things.
That's interesting because I know he was politically motivated to write it. Actually, when you watch his movies, some of his films are really obviously politically motivated, including They Live. And consumerism.
This film was actually written as a response to the Watergate scandal, and They Live. Since Watergate covered Nixon, They Live is really a response to Reaganism in the 80s.
Well, so was Escape from New York with the federal police thing, because he was very concerned about federal police. And of course, it never happened. It wasn't until Clinton that it came back up again, and he wanted to start a federal police force. And then I heard Obama wanted to. It's like, I don't think it's a political thing, wanting a federal police force, but I do think it's wrong to have one. We have enough with the FBI, and all law enforcement is interconnected the way they need to be now, thanks to the horror of 9/11. But anyway, there were some actors that were up for that role before Kurt Russell.
Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones. They were both considered for playing Snake Plissken, and would later work together in the 1994 thriller Blown Away.
Yeah, good film. Despite Tommy Lee Jones' really bad Irish accent. But I could see Jeff Bridges as Snake. I would have trouble seeing Tommy as Snake.
I think Tommy has the look, but Jeff Bridges has the chops to pull it off.
Yeah.
He's got enough
long hair back then too, which was perfect.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to the next film, which is Time Bandits. And the story of a boy who accidentally joins a band of time-traveling dwarves as they jump from era to era looking for treasure to steal. And they stole a map from God in order to find this treasure. It was great.
Who they used to work for.
Yes. And you were like...
sticking it to the man.
Yeah, sticking it to the man. And it was a variation of the Seven Dwarfs kind of thing, and I like that. It was an odd film when it came out. I remember watching it going, what am I watching? This is insane. And of course, when you realize that it was part of the team of Monty Python mixed with George Harrison, who are also the people behind the Jabberwocky movie. So you knew you were in for a treat. I mean, when
this is still a movie that, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, like with a lot of other films, you can watch this with your family and have fun with it. And again, this movie is delightful. It is magical. It is raw compared to a lot of the other films because of how it was filmed and their filming techniques. You have a deeper story in the relationship between Kevin and Agamemnon, and the much deeper story that it, the much more adult type thing that it talks about in Kevin's relationship with his parents. And so it's a good movie. It's a classic film that if you've never shown it to your kids, you need to get on it.
Yeah, it's just such a great, it's timeless too. You can enjoy it now and go, wow, I enjoyed it just as much today as I did back when I was a kid. And it's got such a great cast. You've got Terry Gilliam that directed it. Sean Connery plays Agamemnon and the firefighter at the end of the film.
John Cleese.
You got John Cleese's Robin Hood. A bureaucratic Robin Hood.
Shelley Duvall,
Yeah,
Sir Ralph Richardson, Katherine Hellman, Ian Holm, Michael Palin, who co-wrote the movie, Peter Vaughn, David Rappaport.
David Rappaport,
as you said,
stop. That guy is the star of the movie.
Yes.
And I became such a fan of his, and it broke my heart when he committed suicide.
Yeah.
He was shooting that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and they had gone home for the weekend, and he killed himself, and they had to recast the episode. He was the collector. He collected data as something to keep as an ornament. And it just broke my heart when he died, because there was a plan to shoot a sequel to this film. And without David Rappaport, it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
And Kenny Baker's in it too.
Yeah, the Kenny Baker, who a lot of you may or may not know, is actually R2-D2.
Yep.
So this was just a fun movie.
And David Warner.
Oh, wait a minute. One last person.
David Warner.
Actor David Warner.
Yeah.
Who was coming off of, a few years ago, was coming off of Time After Time, which was a really good movie, although not very kid-friendly.
Yeah,
but it's still a really good
Jack
movie.
the Ripper.
Yeah. And then he would go on right after this movie to make Walt Disney's Tron.
Yeah, but the movie I remember most for is getting his head cut off in The Omen. With that sliding glass, when it slides and cuts his head off. That terrified me. But once again, here's this film, 1981, $5 million budget. And what was its take home at the box office?
The take home for the movie was $42.4 million.
Wow.
That I remember when that movie came out. It did gangbusters at the movie theater, mainly because nobody expected. They didn't know what to expect from the movie. This was one of those movies that even watching the trailer, it looked kind of weird, but you knew it had some connection with Monty Python, so people went.
And the only reason why it's on this list, by the way, is because it involves time travel. And so therefore it's science fiction, even though many of the elements are fantasy. But what a great film. I love that film. But we'll go on now to our next film, which is another Sean Connery property, Outland. And in Outland, Sean Connery plays a federal marshal stationed at a mining colony on Jupiter's moon of Io. He uncovers a drug smuggling conspiracy within the mining colony, and he gets no help from his co-workers, fellow law enforcement officers, or anyone there when it's discovered that his life is in danger, and they've sent killers there to get rid of him, to stop him from investigating. And of course, this is clearly a sci-fi adaptation of High Noon.
Yeah.
And I got to admit that even though this is a top film on my list, I really do love Outland. I was so angry. My dad couldn't get me to shut up. I kept complaining while watching the movie. How old was I? 16 going on 17, I think. And I kept complaining about lividity. You can't take blood from a person's neck, even in 1/6 the Earth's gravity. So lividity would have all the blood pooling on their back, and my dad's like, shh. You can't shoot shotguns in a space place like that. You go right to the plastic walls. Shh. 1/6 gravity. If somebody fired a shotgun, it would propel them backwards like a rocket. God damn it. Can you shut up, Gerry? All right. That was what I was doing. I was complaining the whole film. But I love the film because Sean Connery is so badass in that movie. He really is.
Well, it is a cast. He led a cast that also included Peter Boyle, who many of you may remember from who had a hit years before with Young Frankenstein or Frankenstein, and who also is known for a lot of modern day enthusiasts as the dad in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yep, as the grandfather technically, and he was great in that. God, what a loss when he died. I love that guy. Watched a lot of his movies when I was younger. What an actor.
Frances Sternhagen, who got a lot of press for this movie, and I think she may have even gotten an Academy Award nomination because she was just so good. James B. Sicking, who a lot of people may remember at that time was known for Hill Street Blues.
That's right.
And would go on to become also to work on the movie Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, where he was the original captain of the Excalibur.
That's right. Excelsior.
Oh, Excelsior. Sorry.
Wait a minute here. And the film had a great soundtrack. I mean, they had, what's his name, Jerry Goldsmith. The problem with Goldsmith, and I've said this to you before, is that he plagiarizes himself all the time. So you'll notice themes within that movie in particular that you heard previously in Star Trek. And later you'll hear it in his soundtrack for Predator. Hence, his horn sections often play the same specific melody, you know. And but you know what? You're allowed to steal from yourself. It's okay. But
it's just you can't steal from other people.
Yeah,
the budget for the film was $16 million, and it made between 17 to 20 million.
Oh yeah, another one. Look at that. You know, you see, they could have done so much better if they had just shot that for a lower budget. They should have gone for a lower budget and been more practical with the effects. But with that, we'll move on to the next film, which is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, commonly known in the U.S. just simply as The Road Warrior. And just like Mad Max, it's a continuation. It's a post-apocalyptic Australian wasteland. A cynical drifter agrees to help a small gasoline-rich community escape a horde of bandits, which sounds thematically like some other films we've heard of and love from Akira Kurosawa. You can think any other?
I was thinking more, or I think of the Mad Max films as more in line with kind of the spaghetti Western man with no name type movies, of which I think there's a little bit of that involved in this film, this particular film. But from the team of Kennedy and Miller, these guys definitely had a vision for what they wanted to do. And it was a vision that became something that a lot of other people just seemed to gravitate towards. And this became the highest grossing Australian movie for a long, long time. It changed how people saw post-apocalyptic type filmmaking up to this point, which had been more like films like Planet of the Apes and spoilers, Logan's Run and the Omega Man. And this film changed all of that. It was a genre-altering film, and the cast is just nuts. The stunts are nuts, and again, as I've said before, the biggest thing about Kennedy, I should say about Miller, I should say, is the fact that this is the same guy who years later would go on to make a Mad Max movie that the Academy really loved, that fans really love, and he directed the whole thing in his 70s. Mad Max Fury Road is directed by a man in his 70s who's kicking more butt in every frame of that film than most directors half his age.
Well, it's such a fascinating character. I mean, there's something about stoic individuals that wander.
Yeah.
And then we slowly unravel who that person really is by their actions, you know, and that's just a wonderful form of storytelling. And when you are working on a small budget, because he shot this film for $4 million, again, a big freaking epic type movie, $4 million budget. And that's still saying something for 1981.
Yeah.
And that movie just raked in the money, especially once it hit the U.S. Was it $36 million? $36
million is what it made.
That's basically like take $4 million off. That's $32 million. Like they'd spent nothing and were handed $32 million. I love that. But it did. Blade Runner and which will be coming in our next episode. We'll be talking in depth about Blade Runner. But Mad Max and Blade Runner 2 had two of the biggest impacts on culture.
Mm-hmm.
And cinema too, in how apocalyptic things were shot. Both films are post-apocalyptic, and both had interesting takes on it. Where his was a raw punk type of Western look, and while Ridley Scott's is still punk, but it's more dark, rainy, post-apocalyptic.
And the thing to consider about Australian cinema is that this wouldn't be the last time that an Australian movie would become a trendsetter in pop culture, because at the end of the 90s, the Wachowskis, The Matrix, also did the same thing. It altered the landscape of film and really pop culture around the world with the aesthetics of what they brought to that film and the fashion and everything else. And that's The Matrix.
Yep. And just simply put, Mad Max, the first movie, did not have the impact. Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, had a huge impact on cinema and culture in general, because you brought this up the last time, and I remember learning about this previously, that it inspired what annual gathering?
Oh, it inspired Burning Man.
That's right.
Yeah.
And,
good movie.
And of course, before we end, I want to bring up one of my favorite characters is Vernon Wells, who plays the Mohawk dude. Doesn't say much. He's Humongous's number one guy. He runs around in assless chaps the whole fucking movie, and it's so freaking weird. But when he does that thing in the camera where he just jumps in, where he's like going at Mad Max, he's like, ah, is one of the most memorable moments in cinema history. And I would say he's probably one of the most memorable villains in cinema history as well. And I don't even know what his name is. Just Mohawk guy.
Well, I will say this. Vernon Wells also had the distinction of being in one of Robert Downey Jr.'s first movies, Weird Science.
Oh, shit, he was in that.
Yes.
I forgot that he's in that. Bill Paxton's in there, too. He's another guy that really shot up. But Vernon is really better known over in Australia than he is here. Than he is here. I remember him. He was in Shrimp on the Barbie with Cheech Marin, and I love that movie. And he plays the villain Matrix in the movie Commando. Then Arnold Schwarzenegger says, "You need to let off some steam, Matrix." So, and now we move on to our final film of 1981 that is in our top list of favorite films that year. And it's this itty bitty film. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It's called Heavy Metal. Where
you know what? It is interesting that a film, an animated film, could be as just trend-setting as this movie was. Now, it was expected to be much bigger. Many critics hated this film because they expected this film to be a little bit bigger and better than it actually was. But it was big and it was better, especially for those of us that weren't used to this kind of storytelling animated. Because
a lot of us were familiar though with it.
Yes,
because we grew up reading Heavy Metal magazine, which was an offshoot of the French magazine Metal Harlot. And but I do want to point out, if you don't know the premise to this thing, it's
an anthology movie.
It's an anthology that the film weaves together was something that was not in the heavy metal magazine.
That's right.
This was created solely for the film of this glowing green orb, which embodies ultimate evil, and it terrorizes this young girl by telling her, this series of bizarre and fantastic stories
that seem unrelated at first.
Fantasy, eroticism, and horror, but they're all connected.
Yes. It is a really, really good movie. And it's the kind of film that, given what Elon Musk did a couple months back, you can understand now, if you didn't before, what the whole thing about launching a Tesla into space meant. Because he was as big a fan of this movie as we are.
And that's what he did. Yep. And, one of the things that was sad about this movie was the fact that it's its own worst enemy. It's amazing soundtrack. The soundtrack delayed release on video. It caused all sorts of legal problems for the film moving forward to be released for home release. And because the rights weren't there for home release. And that meant that the production company had to pay more money again to be able to release the film. And so there was this, how long was that? I can't remember, but it seemed like years before we finally got Heavy Metal.
Yeah, Heavy Metal was released in 1981, didn't actually make home video release until I think it was the mid to late 90s.
Yeah,
even
it
then
took a while. And when they finally released it, it was just like, oh my God, we were all so excited. But 1981, walking through our high school halls, you knew the nerds because we would be doing lines from the film,
Yes.
Yes.
Death to all who oppose us.
My favorite was, John Candy's den going, there I was naked standing there with my dork hanging out. And that was my line. And at least I wasn't standing there with my dork hanging out. And then, of course, the plutonium Nyborg line.
Oh, man.
Harold
The one
Ramis.
thing I really know how to do is fly when I'm stoned.
Yeah. You'd get us
Harold
that
Ramis.
plutonium. That's right. And
Good
then, of course, the villain, when with the robotic hand, and he goes, chink, chink, opens his hand, my whips. And my other childhood best friend, Mike Beatty, would just constantly do that. It just in school, that went on for forever. So that movie had an impact, and that's why I felt it was so bad that it took so long to get that damn film released. And I bought the soundtrack.
It's still kind of expensive. I mean, that soundtrack is still one of the most expensive. I mean, if you're able to find a copy of the soundtrack to buy under $20, do it because you're getting a bargain. They still charge a lot of money for that soundtrack, I hear, because of all the rights and the money involved. So, and
but there you have it. And it's a film to see. Great animation. They had different animation teams working on each story. So you got a different feel in there. And it was the film that had the first CG animated human body. So it broke some ground. But
a great score by Elmer Bernstein.
Yeah,
that score is now no longer available, I hear, to buy.
That's terrible.
So it is. I mean, if you find it, buy it because it is worth his theme for Tarna is still one of those classics of Bernstein who, when they play his music in other orchestras or places around the year, that's one of the pieces of music that they use. So,
yeah, I'm not surprised. A lot of composers who make really good themes, you'll incidentally hear it every once in a while in something else to promote it. One of my favorites is the bridge music, the uplifting music from the Untouchables. You'll hear that every once in a while and that was by Ennio Morricone. And you'll hear that every once in a while in another trailer, and I'll go, oh, Untouchables. But that was just a great film. And but before we close, let's touch on at least one stinker from 1981. And it's a stinker that shouldn't have been a stinker, is the movie Heartbeats. Yeah. And you had some thoughts on this.
This is a movie that when you watch the trailer, it looks like something that the Walt Disney Company could have done. should have done. And it looks good, but the way it plays out, it just isn't. I mean, this film is pretty much a film that, just based on looks like it could be all the things that they had hoped it would be. It's Bernadette Peters and actor Andy Kaufman. And the robot bodies themselves look fantastic. I mean, everything visually in this film looks amazing. But it's one of those things
Stan Winston's makeup, practical effects, was so good in it. But then they cheapen it down by bringing in the tank from $6 Million Man as the monstrous villain in it. It looks so chintzy.
Yeah.
And they had so many problems because, like, the gel applications that he had, where they shot up in Oregon, they were having trouble because of the time of year. So the gels were melting and falling off. The applications were falling off people during the shoot. They were having it was just plagued with issues. And they had writing problems with it too, because thematically it's a really interesting story of these two artificial life forms falling in love with each other and wanting to run off and be left alone, and but it is what it is. As far as the makeup goes, Stan Winston, that's the best part of that movie. Andy Kaufman, his acting annoyed a lot of people because, what was it you said he was doing Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd combined into one character? I'm like, yeah, that's not smart. Bernadette Peters absolutely knocks it out of the park. The rest of the cast knock it out of the park.
Bernadette Peters, this is 1981, so isn't this around the same time as Pennies from Heaven?
Yeah, right around the same time.
Yeah.
She was best. I mean, really, honestly, most of her work was on Broadway.
Yes.
She's an amazing singer and dancer, and but she's so cute. And the first time she got on my radar was with Steve Martin when they did The Jerk, and she's his love interest, and I had a crush on her.
Who didn't?
Who didn't? I went out and I bought a copy of the Playboy that she appeared in because I'm like, oh my god, it was so funny. Stupid teenagers. But it should have been a better film. It wasn't, and it's sad. But if you get a chance, you guys should go watch that film just so you can see what we're talking about, because there are certain parts that are so really good. I love the comedian guy with the cigar robot. The jokes he tells, just weird, like a Rodney Dangerfield or Henny Youngman.
Rodney Dangerfield, Henny Youngman type thing.
Yeah. And just it's a funny film. It's just not great. And it's the stinker of the year that I felt was worth mentioning. And Seminoid and Galaxy of Terror, not worth mentioning, even though I just did. But that's it, guys. That's 1981 in a nutshell. Oh, I'm 1981. All in a nutshell. That's my Mike Myers, the spy who shagged me, or whatever that was. Oh, look at me. All in a nutshell. And that's Pop Culture Minefield. That's Keith over there.
That's definitely the amazing Gerry.
And we're going to head out and get us some plutonium Nyborg. And this is Pop Culture Minefield, and we're out of here. Get the fuck up our lawns.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Pop Culture Minefield. If you've enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Remember, you can find us at Pop Culture Minefield on both Facebook and Instagram. Thank you again.
Y'all come back now, you hear?